So if I had a question like, hey, I kind of understand what Polkadot is doing, but I don't really understand the difference between, layer 0 and layer 1. And this probably sounds like a lot of jargon for people who are not yet into the blockchain industry, but the answer that comes out from any one of you guys is very in depth and explaining not just like, hey, layer 0 is this, layer 1 is this. It's, hey, this is what Polkadot's doing. This is what they think. How do they interact, and kind of like that whole picture. So you don't get just this one piece of information, you get the entire perspective of like what's going on in the space. And it really helps you not just fill in that one question, but it helps you fill in like 5 or 6 questions.
What's going on, everybody? We got Matt here. Matt is one of our BCAP students. He joined, I think, around 2 months ago, something like that. And he just wants to share some of the thoughts on the program. So without any further ado, I'm just going to dive into some questions, my man. So first one for you is, where were you at as far as like your crypto experience is concerned when you first joined the program?
When I first joined the program, my friend had basically just told me about Cardano and how Cardano is going to be the future. And then I started diving into blockchain and what blockchain technology was. And contrary to most people's starting points, they usually start with Bitcoin. I started with Cardano for some reason, but yeah, started with reading the white paper with Cardano and kind of learned what a white paper was and learned how they kind of talk about what blockchain technology is. And I bet 90% of it probably went over my head. But then really kind of just started to fall in love with what the space was doing and what I saw the future might look like.
Gotcha. So you were kind of like looking into Cardano and trying to make sense of what it was. And what was your biggest difficulty with like trying to dive into Cardano and really understand it all?
Honestly, it was so overwhelming trying to understand, okay, there's these tokens and, they have a value and like, hopefully it goes up. Like, we want to make some money. Like that'd be cool. But like, what does it do? I think what kind of got me hooked was, they're trying to use student records in Ethiopia. And I was like, they're going to use blockchain for that? Like, how are they going to do that? Like blockchain is just like transactions. Like how are they going to do transactions of like student records? And then it was like, they're also going to do medical records. Like, okay, like how are they going to do that and like record them in transactions and blocks? Like, and everything's publicly available. And I kind of started like switching my mindset a little bit. And I was like, okay, but it's kind of cool. Like if you go to a doctor's office right now, your records are not like public within the ecosystem. Like if you go to a new doctor, you have to ask the old doctor to send all the records, and like the records may never get there. Whereas like with blockchain, you could have all of your records on this, and like, yes, it's public knowledge, but it's also encrypted. So people wouldn't necessarily know exactly who you are. But it would be nice to, go from doctor to doctor. Like if you're in Canada and you go over to Europe and you need your medical records and like someone's allergic to something in terms of medication, like that could be extremely helpful and save people's lives. And so that might be like an extreme example, but blockchain really has this entire new way of thinking where we could use information to our advantage, which has not really been seen before.
So when you first got started, you had an understanding that blockchain really could revolutionize how we store data, but you kind of were thinking that it was mostly just transaction based. And then you slowly started to realize that it's not just transactions, it's just data, and holding different like information about transactions is a form of data. So kind of like going through and understanding that is something that really piqued your interest about crypto to get started. But when you were reading the white papers, did you kind of just feel like it was a foreign language?
Yeah, absolutely. I like you open that thing, and like the Bitcoin one is a little bit more simple. It's only 8 pages, depending on which one you open up. It's like some of them are like 200 pages and they're a little bit harder to stomach, but they've got some math equations that, even taking some calculus courses at university, you're still trying to figure out like what the heck are they talking about. And the really good ones explain it to you a little bit better. And I hope I understand it, but it's not something to be afraid about. It's just something to understand that, hey, they've thought about these problems in terms of risk and what it might mean to the public. And that they've kind of thought like, hey, if people are dishonest and they try and, use an exploit or something, that they've thought about these problems to make everyone have some assurance that when the system's working properly, you can rely on the trust in the security of the system.
Absolutely. So when you first got started with us, Matt and I jumped on a sales call when he first joined our ecosystem.
Yeah.
And he didn't hop on board right away. And he was a little hesitant about things. But then he did join our community. He paid to join right away. And then he started digesting the information. And then he shot me a message one day. It was like, dude, I just need to get started. So, and then that's how Matt got on board with us fully into the whole BCAP program. But once you got started, and as you were starting to implement some of the things that we were teaching you, what are some of the individual things that you did start to take action on that really helped get the ball rolling for you in the crypto space?
So when I started, like I said, I read some stuff about Cardano, and then I read about Bitcoin and then Ethereum, and kind of was like jumping all over the places. And I think part of the reason why I was a little bit hesitant was just like I was really busy at work. But the more time I spent both in the group and doing research on my own, like I just got completely consumed by the knowledge and was just so fascinated by everything that was going on. What really made my growth exponential was I did a little bit of research and I had these pockets of missing information. And by hanging out in the group, and whether it was Yoni or you or Johnny, like everyone's just always there to answer questions. So if I had a question like, hey, I kind of understand what Polkadot is doing, but I don't really understand the difference between, layer 0 and layer 1. And this probably sounds like a lot of jargon for people who are not yet into the blockchain industry, but the answer that comes out from any one of you guys is very in depth and explaining not just like, hey, layer 0 is this, layer 1 is this. It's, hey, this is what Polkadot's doing. This is what they think. How do they interact, and kind of like that whole picture. So you don't get just this one piece of information, you get the entire perspective of like what's going on in the space. And it really helps you not just fill in that one question, but it helps you fill in like 5 or 6 questions. And once you start to do that over time, it really just starts to make sense. Like it's been 60 days and I feel like my growth has gone from, hey, I understand 2 different cryptocurrencies, to now I understand a lot more about how the space works and how everyone's trying to solve all these different problems.
Yeah, once you understand like the foundational technology behind it, that's when your knowledge curve just exponentially spikes up. Because no longer when you're reading a white paper, you're like, what the heck is this? And for those that are listening that don't know what a white paper is, a white paper is just like a report that a cryptocurrency or the organization behind a cryptocurrency creates to explain to everybody what it actually is and like the purpose of it and the utility and the tokenomics and other jargony words that we're not going to get into right now. But it's essentially just tells you what the cryptocurrency is about. And a lot of people, when they first dive in, they'll try to read that and it makes no freaking sense to them at all. And it sounds like Matt, like now that after going through BCAP, you have a full understanding when you're reading those things, what you're actually reading. And you're able to make investment decisions based on that now, that are not only for the short term, but for the long term. So now, would you say that because of that foundational understanding that you now have, you're able to look into coins and say, like, I believe in this for the long term. And then if it drops in value, you don't worry because now you have conviction on it.
Yeah, definitely tons of conviction. Like there's no secret. You have to put in the work yourself to understand this stuff, but this is the perfect ecosystem to be in to have that exponential growth. Something dips like you were saying and reduces in price, like you can still have the conviction that like, hey, I've still made a good decision, and I can go to sleep at night on time and still wake up in the morning and be just fine with that it dropped for a little bit, but I believe in the long-term value. And that's what the group really offers, is showing you how to see long-term value.
Yeah. And that's where some of the biggest opportunities come into play. Like Luna dropped from what, $20 down to $5 in the summer of this year. And people that don't really know the underlying technology might think like, oh man, I knew this cryptocurrency stuff wasn't worth it. But we were, letting our community know that we were buying at $5. And then that's when people were starting to buy it. And today it just crossed $52 in like 3 months time, 2 to 3 months time. And that's only possible because of a solid understanding of the foundational technology behind it all. And it's really not that difficult, right? Once you start to learn it, it's kind of like pretty simple once you get the ideas behind it.
Yeah. And I think I remember when we had that day in September, like Luna was the most stable of them all. So it was kind of cool to see like, hey, we learned about Luna at that point in time. And then we watched something. I mean, everyone knows that the crypto space is pretty volatile right now because it's still trying to figure itself out. But you watch something that you take and spend an entire class learning about, and then you watch this thing hold up more stable than every other project out there.
Yeah. So, Matt, what have your results been like since joining the program, since joining the BCAP program?
Since joining the BCAP program, in terms of like actual knowledge, my growth has been exponential. And then same thing in terms of the portfolio, like I've definitely seen some pretty exponential growth. I think I've somewhere between like 2.5 and 3 times my portfolio. And it's definitely just been like a lot of patience too. Like it's not throwing it into all these different things. It's like small moves that are just very methodical and using the methods in the class.
What's the highest return you've gotten from one coin?
Highest return value, I think 6x right now.
Absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
In like 2 months, right?
In 2 months.
600%. Oh man, this space is incredible. What's the highest APY that you're currently getting from passive investment opportunities?
I haven't checked Wonderland in about 24 hours, but the last time I checked it, it was like 72,000% APY. Like it's not just a made up number. Like it's the way that cryptocurrency is built. It's built on rebasing itself, which is a little bit more advanced, but something that gets covered. But yeah, it's crazy.
And these numbers sound crazy and like they're too good to be true. As a novice investor that doesn't know anything about the space, you see that number, you're like, well, that's not real. Like that's too good to be true. They're just going to take my money. But then once you understand why and it makes sense to you, you're like, okay, this makes sense. I can invest into this and I can get 70,000% APY because of XYZ. And that's what we teach you guys. It's nuts, man.
Yeah. And that's exactly what the BCAP program did. Like it helped me learn how to research crypto assets to understand that like, hey, this APY, like, yes, it sounds atrocious and something that banks will never offer you necessarily, but there is like some solid foundation as to why it is that and why it has longevity.
So what would you tell someone that's currently sitting on the fence about joining BCAP?
If you want to start taking your future in your own hands, I think that making the investment in yourself is the best way that you can do it. I've definitely done that with getting some other designations like the CPA designation in my life. And this feels like a nice natural extension. I know not everyone's an accountant, but this BCAP program is a nice investment in yourself and really does help you learn the space at like the very emerging technology forefront of the world right now.
Thank you so much, Matt. We really appreciate having you in the group, dude. Matt his knowledge has grown so much since joining that he's now writing reports on various like cryptocurrency projects. And he's actually been sharing them with some of the other students. And it's been absolutely incredible to see, dude. You're extremely talented, smart man. So we're really honored to have you join us inside of the program and go through everything. So thanks again, man. And I really appreciate you hopping on this call and let's keep growing together.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for taking the time.